Thank you so much. I'm Sarah Henry, the Robert A. and Elizabeth Roan Jeffy Chief Curator and Deputy Director at the Museum of the City of New York. And I'm happy and honored to be here with these colleagues to share with you some of the strategies and approaches that the Museum of the City of New York has taken over the last several months to face the crises, opportunities, and obligations of 2020. So first, a few words about the Museum of the City of New York. For those of you who are not familiar, we're at Fifth Avenue and 103rd Street across from Central Park's Conservatory Gardens. And we were founded in 1923 as the first museum in the United States dedicated to the study of a single city. So the oldest and first city museum in the US. Our mission is to celebrate, to document, and to interpret the city's past, present, and future. And in doing so, to foster an understanding of the distinctive nature of urban life in New York City, the United States' largest and most influential metropolis, and by extension, to get our visitors and public to think about the nature of urbanism worldwide. So before I dive into what we have been up to over the last several months, I want to give you a little bit of context about what has been going on specifically in New York City. First, with respect to the COVID crisis, I think as you all remember, there was, for a period in the early part of 2020, New York was the global epicenter of the global epidemic. And this chart shows the case rate from March 1st, 2020 to October 1st, 2020. And you can see here so vividly the moment of true crisis in New York that came in late March, April, and early May in terms of the number of cases. And of course, this was a medical and a human crisis, but it was also an urban crisis. Here you can see one of our famously crowded and bustling streets in the eerie quiet and solitude and isolation that we all felt during those days of the particularly high case rates and death rates from the COVID virus. The Museum of the City of New York's response to the pandemic was complicated by a variety of factors. In fact, we really felt that we were facing a dilemma, as did so many other organizations, institutions, and individuals in the early days of the pandemic. For us, it began with the fact that, like so many other institutions across the city and across the world, we closed our doors, in our case on March 13th. So with the galleries closed, we faced an existential financial crisis. Like a lot of museums in the United States, the Museum of the City of New York is a private, not-for-profit organization. And we are responsible for raising the lion's share of our annual budget, not from government sources, but from earned income, from admissions in the shop and other enterprises, and also from contributed income from private sources. And the closure of the galleries and, of course, the worldwide crisis made a huge problem in those areas. As a result, we faced enormous budget cuts. And as a result of those, we had to make significant reductions in our staff. In some cases, as furloughs, temporary layoffs, and in other cases, very sadly, major permanent cuts in the size and number of the staff. And of course, that was a serious constraint in our ability to respond to the events. And at the same time, we felt really keenly that never before had our mission been so important. Understanding and connecting the past, present, and future of the five boroughs of New York City. Connecting the past to the present. What historical examples could help us understand what we were facing? Connecting the present to the future. What questions could we ask about the COVID city and the post-COVID city, and how the trajectory of New York's life and development might be changed? And I think most profoundly in a lot of ways was this kind of existential crisis around the very nature of urbanism itself. What does it mean to be a densely populated place, a place that's a crossroads for people, for money, for ideas, for goods, where people from all over the world mix together and come and go, and live so and work and move so closely with one another? What is the future of that kind of living in the age of COVID? So with that in mind, we met as a museum and with our trustees overall to look at the strategy of our institution. And we focused in the spring of 2020 on three principal strategies. The first is that recognizing that our physical visitorship would be for the foreseeable future, not coming from tourism. We needed to really focus on the meaning of the museum in the city of New York for our hyper-local area, not only for our 5 boroughs, for our city, but for our neighborhood. And that needed to be something that informed the way that we dealt with our physical space when we would be able to reopen. The second was to really take a step back and ask, what is the use of a history museum in a time of crisis? How can we, by playing our unique role and embracing our mission, be of use to our city in its moment of need? This is a hard question to ask at a moment when people are fighting literally for their lives, for the lives of others, and for the life of the city. But we knew that the mission of the museum was profound and important at this moment of crisis. And of course, the third one is that so much of what we were going to do would have to take place online with our galleries closed. So first we looked back in our archives in connecting the past and the present. In 1918, of course, was the flu pandemic that came at the tail end of World War I and swept the globe. And in 2018, the Museum of the City of New York, along with the Welcome in London and the New York Academy of Medicine, created an exhibition to mark the centennial of that event called Germ City, Microbes in the Metropolis. And we knew that digging into our archives to look at this exhibition would be particularly important. We made it available online, and it also caught the attention of the press. So we were able to provide historical context to the events that the city was facing in the early part of 2020, and to be of service to the press and in education in bringing these stories forward. But the other piece of the puzzle that we, of course, have to go over is the racial justice uprising that began in late May and early June of 2020 after the killing of George Floyd. And the New York and the racial justice uprisings became a real focus of our strategy and our response alongside the COVID pandemic. Of course, this happened as New York streets, as like other city centers across the country and around the world, erupted in protests against police violence and in support of racial justice. And we knew that this was an important part of the story that we needed to document and interpret by looking to past, present, and future. And we had the advantage that we already had on view at the museum and online what we believe was one of the first, if not the first, exhibition that looked at the movement for Black Lives, the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement that was installed in our gallery, Activist New York, some years ago. And so we really had a strong foundation to build on as we looked at the unfolding of the racial justice uprising of the spring and summer and on into the fall of 2020. So we took these two crises together and we crafted our initiatives under an umbrella, which we call New York Responds. It's a multi-pronged initiative. It includes collecting, public programming, education programming for students and teachers, and also exhibitions. And of course, all of these have to have principally an online life, though as I will tell you, we are also presenting things on site as well. So I'm going to take these one at a time. First of all, collecting. Our strategy was an open call, which we sent out over social media, encouraging people to use two hashtags, hashtag Activist New York and hashtag COVID Stories NYC. And we also invited submissions of ideas of things for the collection by email as well. And we've received a lot of submissions. They include signage from around the city, objects such as on the left, this pan that was used at the 7 o'clock cheering that was taking place every evening in support of the first responders and healthcare workers, artworks like this piece, and lots of photographs, some 20,000 to date and counting. We drew upon those submissions even before we opened our doors to create an outdoor installation that would be of use and service to our immediate community, which opened in late July and early August of this summer on the exterior of our building, both the facade and on our beautiful front terrace. We drew from images that have been submitted online, and we offered a call to continue to share news stories. Share your New York City story was the invitation on the outside of the building. We're now planning the second phase of this installation, and this is scheduled for indoors at the Museum of the City of New York, drawing on those 20,000 submissions that included photographs, artifacts, oral histories, artworks, written word. We had many things to sort through. We were drawing on the submissions to our open call, but we were also drawing on a network of partners. And we felt it was very important to collaborate with and highlight the work of a whole variety of institutions citywide that are working within their mission and particularly with their local communities to document the events of 2020. And to sort through all these submissions through our open call and through the partnership with these collecting organizations, we assembled a community jury of 12 New Yorkers from many different walks of life who helped us to make the very hard task of narrowing down these incredibly moving things. And these people are some of them from the arts, but not all. We have representation of philanthropy, of urban planning, of the restaurant industry, of medicine, education, activism, essential workers, and the police represented among this very amazing and hardworking jury. And finally, we're mindful that this exhibition will need to be something that can be seen online, but also in person and designed in a way that can be created for social distancing so that it can comply with the requirements. And our plan is to open it in December of 2020. With my last couple of minutes, I want to talk about the other arms of the New York Responds Project. Public programming has been area of great activity for us. We've been able to build a tremendous digital audience, as others of my colleagues note. There's a real opportunity in this digital pivot that we're able to reach people far flung. So we've introduced new series like Curators on the Couch. We've created new content that responds directly to both the COVID pandemic and the racial justice uprising. And have helped us to look both back and forward as we consider where we've been, what these crises have meant to us, and what the city will become. Education has been an area of tremendous resonance for the museum and its audiences, particularly as we've been serving teachers who are teaching for the greatest part remotely. So we've reached into our archives to find content that can help teachers give historical context to both the pandemic and the racial justice uprising. And we've also been working to document the stories of teachers in education during this period, including a collaboration with StoryCorps that's been who's been partnering with us to draw out some of the experiences of educators at this time. So finally, as we stand at this juncture, at this precipice, We're very mindful that as a museum of the City of New York, we need to play a vital role as we discuss where the city is headed next. I alluded to an existential crisis before, and that has been very, very evident in the discussions of the effect of both crises of 2020 on New York City. The question of whether and how New York will recover and how cities in general will regain their vibrancy has been the subject of tremendous debate. On the one hand, those who are bemoaning the idea that there is no urban future in a spirited debate with those who feel that this is a terrible blow and a setback, but really there is a tremendous comeback to come. So we know that no one knows the future of this, but that it's vitally important that New Yorkers, urban dwellers, and people who love cities all over the world be engaged with and educated about and participate in conversations about what a just recovery from this pandemic will look like. So we reopened our doors on August 27th. We do not know what the future will hold in terms of keeping the doors open, but we're hopeful. And we know that our mission is more important than ever. So thank you so much.